Hello and welcome to the Xenothesis podcast. My name is Richard Acton, and in this episode, episode 65, we're covering chapters 3 and 4 from part 3 Imago of book 3 Imago of the Xenogenesis trilogy by Octavia E. Butler. I'm joined, as always, by my hopefully non-slug-formed co-host,
Michael Glinka. Hi, everyone.
How you doing, Michael? You're holding it together?
I mean, barely, to be honest. Barely, but to be fair, enjoying a nice river, floating, eating sometimes. What a life, no stress, maybe except for occasional predator. But except for that, why not? I would take it.
Yeah, not too bad. But yes, so that with that little lead-in, what were your predictions for chapter 3?
Yeah, I was like, oh boy, Eir is back, but not as a human, more of like a slug mollusk, and the fact that Jodas needs to help it to get back to its normal form. In the meantime, Jesus and Thomas are getting chemically addicted to Jodas, meaning that all the craziness is floating all around. Typical Octavia Butler style. So I thought that this chapter, obviously Jodas will start working on Eir because its changes are maybe related to second metamorphosis. But at the same time, how is it possible that Eir is undergoing second metamorphosis if it didn't even meet any human mates? Any mates in general. So I was just like, this was confusing part for me.
Okay, yeah, I don't know if I think we discussed it a little bit last episode, right? We weren't sure whether or not the second metamorphosis was something that was requiring mates, or if it was just something which typically happened around that time. I don't think we have from memory, I don't think we have a textual confirmation of that.
We didn't come to conclusion. I think we just came to conclusion the fact that this is taking faster than the normal Oankali would experience this,
yes.
Right? The construct that something in the human part is making them basically undergo the second metamorphosis faster than other Oankali would experience it. Pure Oankali would experience that.
Yeah, it seemed as though the onset was either earlier or less controlled, less conditional in some sense.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, and that I think that was kind of borne out, right? We got Jodas working on Eir.
Yeah.
And then it also may be related to its second metamorphosis, its ability to whether or not it manages to stop dissolving, maybe related to whether or not it can get through its second metamorphosis.
So let's get to the chapter 3, I guess. So indeed, Eir started its second metamorphosis. You can't try to bring it back to its original form, but even then, it was just a mess of a grey skin, bipedal, but very weak, hairless, and couldn't speak. Its organs weren't functioning properly. It still had webbed flippers. And problem was the fact that it wasn't the bringing back the problem, the problem was that it kept slipping towards the less complex form. So, Eir was pretty broken at this point.
Yeah, it's sort of all of its cells are kind of like de-differentiating in some sense, like going back to some kind of general nondescript cell type, and then actually just like dissociating from one another. It seems to be the direction of travel that it wants to go in, almost like a reverse development, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is something we've discussed a little bit before. We talked about like Waddington's epigenetic landscape and cell differentiation in a couple of contexts in previous episodes, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is the hell of a experience, I would say, when your body is basically dissolving, even though you want to be, but your body is just doing the opposite.
Yeah, there's an interesting contrast there, right? Because we've got Eir very much consciously wanting to be whole, and yet slipping into this dissolute state.
Yeah.
So it's it's always interesting when there is a conflict between the conscious thought processes of the Oankali and their biology, given how how much conscious control they sometimes seem to have over it, and other times how much they seem to be driven by it. So it's interesting to think about what it is that is causing it to be dissolving rather than staying together, despite the fact that it wants to stay together. But yeah, it seems to be this biological need to find some mates.
Yeah, I think that must be the trigger for it to not be able to maintain its form. But yeah, let's continue because the chapter goes into more details about this. So Ayer was laid down and Jodas had to look into it. It asked Thomas to lie down behind it so they can connect all together. Jodas confirmed that what Icahn said, the body wanted to be less and less complex. If it stayed unattended, it would eventually break down to individual cells. Seeds of life with oncally organelles. So the cells would survive, but Ayer as a being would not. This hunger for mates wasn't just for talk, it literally was a hunger that could kill. And this is why the oncally wanted to lock them on the mothership, because those rogue cells with oncally organelles could lead to a biological disaster, right? And Ayer tried to help Jodas, but it was too weak. It just wasn't able to create enough, energy or conscious energy, willpower to maintain its form. Thomas, on the other hand, Thomas tried to escape because of the repulsion, but Jodas put him to sleep.
Yeah. It doesn't sound very fun.
No.
The whole thing with the oncally organelles being able to wreak havoc on the environment is an interesting little factoid as well, right? We didn't really get a concept of what sort of an out of control or unaligned oncally
organelle would be. Yeah, it's just like. It sounds like more of like a accelerated evolution type of situation where like the cells invade other cells and stuff, and then suddenly it leads to basically a normal plant becoming releasing some toxins that basically kill half of the life on the planet type of situation.
It seems like the sort of thing the oncally could probably get back under control once they noticed it.
Yeah.
But you got yourself a bit of a kind of biological grey goo scenario going on here.
Absolutely. So yeah, after a few days, Ayer was almost back to normal. Thomas hated this contact with another Uloi. Jodas though continued and Thomas joined reluctantly, honestly. Eventually, Jesusa exchanged and she hated it as well. It felt as I've been crawled over by a lot of slugs. Yeah. Ayer's body kept slipping. Jesusa asked why it felt so disgusting, and there were two reasons behind it. Ayer isn't Jodas, so the biological contact is really repulsive for the siblings. The reasons are biochemical. Ayer smells and tastes wrong to them. But Jodas needed Ayer to feel them and to help it recovery. But at the same time, if it felt their repulsion, that wouldn't help. So Jodas had to block the repulsion they were feeling so it can help it recover. But the fact is, it was very ill and couldn't stabilize. Jesusa then asked what will happen to Ayer, and if they can get through the metamorphosis, then Jodas thought that they should be okay. Otherwise, ship exile to be allowed to dissolve. Jesusa realized that it meant death to Ayer, and she knew it was because she was made in the village to watch people die and take care of the dying. People knew that they could trust her because she would do the necessary thing. And Jesusa then asked if Ayer could go back to normal if it had mates, and Nazareth most certainly yes. She thought maybe if they fixed their faces and look like they used to do, maybe the siblings could convince some people to join them, maybe convince help Ayer. But Thomas thought that they will probably get killed.
Yeah, and that's an interesting little kind of wrap up at the end there, right? The sort of not asking them again to go back to the village, but then more or less waiting for them to come to that conclusion and this little plan on their own, right? It's just a very It's a very Oankali way of quote unquote respecting their decision, right? It's just sort of stand off and let them come to the conclusion you wanted them to come to on their own. Sort of.
Sort of, yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, the chapter basically ends here with the siblings pondering and weighing their options, to do it or not to do it. That is the question. And Jodas didn't want them to destroy who they are or they were, to fully betray their people. But, Jesus had decided that, they need to help Eir to save Jodas' sibling, because Jodas was more important to them. They already betrayed the people, so to hell with everything. She didn't ask Thomas, will he join? Didn't I promise you I would get you back there? And that's where the chapter ends.
Yeah, there's kind of an interesting little bit of rationale on the quote-unquote betrayal there, right? It's a, if I remember correctly, Jesuso's kind of saying that their choice was basically between like now and later, right? They could bring a couple of extra people under the Oankali's sway, as it were, sooner and help out Eor, or they could just, wait a little longer and they'd all end up under Oankali rule sooner
basically,
or later.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, this chapter really unpacks the situation of what's going on and what, and the case with Eor, the fact that the body, although it desires to exist, its option is, if it cannot fulfill its basic need, is to dissolve and then become many and then share its organelle. So that would be the most basic coding of those of an Oankali, that if you cannot fulfill your own sort of biological needs.
Actually, it feels a lot like apoptosis, right? But at an organismal scale, right? The cell, the unit of the population here, the ooloi is not able to fulfill its intended function in some sense. So it's breaking itself down into its component parts to be reused by the rest of the organism.
Yeah, absolutely. But in case this is not reusable by organisms, it's spreading its organelle to be reused by different organisms. But yeah. Well,
I mean, I suppose in the environment of most Oankali, the surrounding space is kind of the larger Oankali organism, right? Especially on the ship, right?
Yeah.
Basically, everything around them is always, in some sense, related to them and an immediate part of their ecosystem. So they have a kind of a selective scale that is greater than the individual units, the same way that cells have a selective scale that's greater than their individual units, right? So the reason you can get, the reason game theoretically you can get something like apoptosis at the individual cellular level, like it doesn't make sense for the cell, right? But the cell is only able to reproduce if the entire organism reproduces, right? So there's an alignment between the two scales. So you have I suppose a similar sort of thing here, where the Oankali organism at the scale of an Oankali ship unit, as it were, is not going to be able to reproduce and move on to another planet unless all of its constituent Oankali are in line with the program.
Yep. Yeah, it's. I see what you mean.
They're kind of part of the superorganism.
Yeah. It's interesting how Oankali are depicted here, because it doesn't really fit in any of the hierarchies or development of societies that develop in animal kingdoms. So, especially now that we know that it's like fits in like with the whole suicide is better than not mating type of situation. It's not fulfilling its own biological need. It's a weird concept, right? When you think about it, because it does feel like that, the second metamorphosis, especially for an Uloi, is incredibly crucial, right? And we don't know if, for example, an Uloi can do it, like original pure Uloi Oankali Uloi can undergo it anytime, or can it postpone it? Like, it seems the constructs can't do it. When it happens, it just happens, and you have to go whether you have mate or not.
To draw another analogy to more cellular level biology, I suppose it might be a bit like a checkpoint in the cell cycle, right?
Yeah.
Where you've got this, the reproductive cycle of the cell where it's replicating its genome, and then it's growing, and then it's, you've got the cell cycle. But there are checkpoints for transitioning between the different stages of that cycle, and if you don't sort of meet the criteria for getting past that, then you might get diverted into an apoptotic pathway, got stuck somewhere.
I see what you mean now with the whole one organism, like the multi-organism, basically. It feels like literally a cell, like the whole mothership is like a massive cell, and the Oankali are basically just parts of it that, if something doesn't go wrong, this sort of pathway has to be abolished to, the check within. Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. That's I think it's quite a strong analogy there. Right? They have this superorganism concept for the Oankali society as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. It's literally like a metaphor for a cell. I can see it. I do see it. Yeah. But yeah. Shall we go to the chapter 4 prediction?
Yeah.
So Jodas, Jesus, and Thomas are going to try save Eeyore by having it brought to the human village, but they can't move it until metamorphosis is finished. So they will have to wait until it's done before they can go there. And knowing Octavia Butler, there's going to be some issues raising, and obviously based on the whole idea of they can't refuse and waiting for them, coming to decision, then we already betrayed our people, might continue with it situation. I don't know if they will be that. I don't know. I just felt to me that maybe something will happen in terms of Jesus and Thomas against Jodas, and the whole situation somehow bubbling up until a conflict arises.
So are you thinking about maybe a conflict between
more of like an internal conflict, internal conflict of between Jesusa with Thomas and Jesusa against Jodas, and then also against the human, there's the conflict between them. We want to go, but we could go by ourselves, but then we can't really leave, right? Because obviously they can't leave.
Yeah. So we get kind of the first half of that conflict in the next chapter, right? We get the conflict between Jesusa and Tomas and Jodas to some degree here, but also between them and the other humans in Jodas's extended family. But so shall we?
Let's get to it. So as always, there were some issues, and they couldn't leave until the metamorphosis ended. Also, Thomas and Huza thought that they could be given their tumors back and they would go by themselves, but they couldn't leave anymore. They found out like Lilith did, so they did what Lilith did. Went away on their own to think. Just as Lilith said to Jesusa when she and they both were repairing the roof, that just go away, have a thought, think about it, and come back with questions. That's exactly what they did. And Jodas realized that they were gone when their scent started to fade. When in panic it started to run after them, just stopped it. She comforted Jodas, saying that they will come back, they will be fine, because they are adults and they don't need Jodas' protection all the time. Jodas should go speak to Lilith. She used to do this. go away so far. She used to go away so far that it almost strangled her.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm not sure if Lilith was kind of hinting at the fact that Jesusa should go away far enough that it would be taxing on the bond that she has with Jordas, or if it was more just get clear enough of him for now that you can not be immediately influenced by his pheromones and whatnot. Yes. But it felt like a bit of a hint in this direction.
Oh, absolutely.
Without explicitly going there.
Absolutely. So Jordas found Lilith painting. We're told that humans used to do it even now, and Lilith did it because it made her feel human.
And I thought it was quite a nice little another character moment with Lilith, right? She's in these two books, she's been kind of a background figure to our main protagonist, but we still get quite occasionally nice little bits of quite efficient, tantalizing characterization of kind of who she's grown into in this new environment. But we get a little bit about her process of preparing like bark to paint on, and the fact that her paintings are kind of like treasured by the family, and then even just there's a little bit of internal monologue of Jordas kind of looking at her paintings and saying that every individual in them was recognizably who they were. But Jordas had this impression that that shouldn't be the case, right? It's they're just these kind of line drawings, and yet they're still managing to capture it. So this sort of disjoint between the very kind of almost literal mindedness, exactness of the Oankali mind, and the more human kind of abstract essences and the sort of economy in narrative storytelling to reduce the essence of these people to some character in line form, right? It contrasts their approaches quite nicely, right?
Oh, absolutely. But yeah, so Jordas told her that the siblings are gone. And Lilith knew that they will not trust her or anyone for keeping the truth to themselves. She told Jordas to stay put for now and go after them in a few days' time. They will distrust and hate Jordas, but it will pass. Those things that won't disappear towards Lilith and others, though. And it was thanks to the pheromones that they will not hate Jordas, but they will hate the other members of the family.
Yeah, that was interesting one there. I think Lilith was saying that Tino also would kind of that she and Tino would sort of get the brunt of the disapproval from Tomas and Jesusa.
Absolutely. Yeah. So after a few days, Jordas brought them back, quiet, sulking, angry, and they needed to leave with Eir. Jesusa treated Eir better than Jordas at this point as punishment. They were angry. Thomas explained to Jordas and the fact that Jesusa was good at hunting punishment. She was feeling trapped at the moment, but she would forgive it eventually. Hopefully.
Yeah, I thought that there's this really telling little quote from Tomas here. So, she'll forgive you eventually, and she'll be very suspicious of why she's done it. And she'll be right, won't she? Which is, interesting, right? You've got all these kind of, recursive doubt problems in the mind of the human, right? It's
absolutely.
I feel like I've forgiven him, but no, it's like I don't know.
Is it because I decide to forgive, or is it?
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, that's yay for superhuman chemical gaslighting powers.
Basically, yeah. Love it.
Dear. Yeah, not good, but okay, fine. That's par for the course with the Oankali.
Absolutely.
The human reproductive politics is complicated, but Octavia Butler seems to have said to hold my beer with this whole
absolutely
concept.
She really like how to add spice to already spicy dish, right? It's
Yeah, so how can I take this thing that's already like a complete mess and cause of like, you know, wars and conflict and turn it into like, you know, significantly worse?
Oh yeah, absolutely. But yeah, the rain season was ending, and finally Aero was strong enough to go by itself. Before they left though, Nikanj told them a few things. They can't go back here. The rest of the family will go back to Lo, and from there, other Onkali will find out about the humans. It might be a situation they will never meet again, in fact. And second, Nikanj needed to share the Uloi knowledge with Jodas. Genetic memories. Viable copies of all the cells that Nikanj received from its own Uloi parent or it collected by itself. Although Jodas was initially against it, you know, a bit, not against it, but more of apprehensive. It accepted it.
Yeah, I think it's almost like like not right now. There's too much other stuff going on.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it took it, and it overwhelmed it. The rush of individual cells going into its newly mature Yashi organ. And here's a piece from the book. There was immense newness. Life in more varieties than I could possibly have imagined. Unique units of life, most never seen on Earth. Generations of memory to be examined, memorized, and either preserved alive in status or allowed to live their natural span and die. Those that I could recreate from my own genetic material, I did not have to maintain alive. It was incomprehensible at first and it will take time to digest. Now, except for lack for Onkali or construct mates, Jodas was a mature Uloi.
And this is an interesting point about the transition of the kind of, or the transmission rather, of the genetic memory that I don't think we'd really seen before, right? Because we have this kind of impression of it as being, you know, ordinarily heritable.
Yes.
But it seems as though at least a significant fraction of it is passed physically.
Yes.
Once the Uloi children are adults, as we see here.
Yeah. And it's interesting because obviously this is like an overwhelming given like amount of information, data being given without really organization, right? So it's like going back to the many times you talked about, you know, the genetic memories and how they can like, it's funny because it seems that every Onkali just undergoes this sort of sharing of the knowledge, but nobody shares the code to it. It's just like, yep, this is it. This is all we always inherited. Take it.
I mean, there's we get a little bit of Jodas' internal monologue through this process, and you get the impression that it will be able to kind of like skim some of this stuff and sort of reflect on its contents and construct kind of an index for it in its more conventional brain structures, which it does seem the Oankali have, right?
Yep.
So that it can go do the lookup operations that we kind of alluded to before whenever we discussed the challenge of having, like, you know, serialized genetic memory.
Each time, yeah.
But it's this gives us kind of a new perspective on it and makes sense of why the immature Uloi don't have kind of a full access to all of the genetic memories. Although I forget how we had other Oankali who don't have this Yashi organ interacting with genetic memory before, because I thought
so from what we're told is that when Akin, I think, when we had perspective for Akin's perspective, there was the idea of, you know, understanding the concepts of like molecules and stuff like that, but it was always, there was something always blocking it. I think it might have been even Joda's perspective at the very beginning. There was something there, but the moment it's underwent its metamorphosis, the perspective suddenly shifted. The whole idea being able to even perceive atomic particles.
Yeah, but perhaps it's more along the lines of the other Oankali, the males and the females, and if they have access to some cells which have a component of the genetic memory in them, then they can sort of read them off.
Yeah.
Right?
I
or
think
if they're interacting with an Uloi.
Yeah, I don't
whereas
think
the
they
Uloi
have
has like the full library, as it were.
Yeah, I don't think they have the organ, obviously, because that only described the Yashi organ. So obviously, and we know that the Onkali in general like to bring more different cells and stuff like that to their Ulois. So obviously, this is more of like they're capable of maybe detecting things, but not really manipulating them as such.
Yeah, it seems like they have a sort of limited capacity for picking them up and storing them and reading them even, but not like a long-term retention process, whereas the Uloi seem capable of doing that. And sort of, a bit more involved reading and writing and reorganizing of the contents of those things.
Here's a question. What happens if an adult Uloi dies? Right? It's Yashi organ, right? Imagine the situation, the Onkali organelles are going to spread around. Does this mean that the Yashi organelle that was, keeping all the cells alive and storing them for later, would the cells from that organ with the organelles would store still that information, or would it just be, reused by those cells for to survival? Because obviously some of it's just organelles, or DNA or whatever, but
Well, if the organelles themselves go back to being free living organisms and kind of dissolve their eukaryotic endosymbiotic relationship with the cell that they're currently living in, then presumably whatever the host genome information is not coming with them, right? So I assume you'd lose the information from the nuclear genome. And only the Oankali organelle genome would persist. So I suppose it depends how the information is stored in these cells. I would have thought in the nuclear genome, because that makes sense from the perspective of you can put more stuff there.
Absolutely.
If you're doing the storage, right? The nuclear genome is a lot bigger than the genome of the other organelles that have genomes, mitochondria and chloroplasts. So I guess if you're doing storage, then
I guess what would probably happen, the organelles will start invading the cells that were stored, and probably some of the organisms that were stored there would probably come back to life as part of new Onkali species in a way, or reused Onkali species in a way.
Yeah, there could be any number of possibilities there, right? They may well be able to make use of some of the genetic information stored in those parent cells in some sense while they're stitching together whatever new setup they have in the new host organisms they're invading. Given that they seem to have a lot of genome manipulation capabilities baked in. Who knows?
Who knows?
I suppose that some of that could potentially be lost if it's not been shared with another Uloi.
Most likely,
as in from the shared pool of knowledge from the Oankali. But it seems as though what Nikanja is doing here is it's made a copy of everything that it's giving to Jordas, right?
Yeah.
So it retains its own version.
Yeah.
So presumably everyone else retains their own version. And adds to it, and then when they interact, they will share their changes.
Yeah, absolutely. So after some time, Jordas was finally able to speak and told Thomas that it feels a little bit like a drunk human. Explain what happened, and Thomas joked that they will leave it here to sober up and catch up to them. And here's a part from the book. It's not really like being drunk, I said when I could speak. It's more like having billions of strangers screaming from inside of you for your individual attention. Incomprehensible, overwhelming. No word is big enough. Let me stick close to you for a while. The chapter ends with Jordas reassuring that it can travel as long as it can stay too close to Thomas. And that's where the chapter ends, basically. yeah, it's just it's an interesting concept, that the fact that it's everything that it was given is just wants its attention, or rather the organelle wants to focus, its organ wants to focus on everything, but there's too much of it, and it has to sift through it one by one, basically.
Yeah, as it's like another one of those, you've just acquired a new sense.
Yeah. Good luck.
Now figure out how to deal with all these inputs.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yep. So yeah, it's got to kind of acclimatize to that, the presence of all this stuff, and learn how to direct its attention more effectively again.
Absolutely. So yeah, should we go to my chapter 5 predictions?
Yeah.
So obviously it's hard to tell, because there's going to be a journey, obviously, from the house to the village. And as all our journeys go, we all know that it can go bad.
Yeah, we've not had very many journeys that went smoothly.
No, there was none. So in my prediction is that in the Gold Octavia style, there will be a journey, but not without hiccups, and something definitely is going to hit them. Like, it just bound, like, definitely some resistors or something, just, hello, missed me, and type of situation,
Yeah. I mean, like the last time we did this, we were shot a couple of times from random resistor snipers. So
yeah, each time, to be honest, when they first left the law, they got hit. When Jodas went on a journey and was coming back, they got hit. The number 4 4 people they're traveling, they're definitely gonna catch attention.
I think the only time things went moderately smoothly was when they flew up to the ship, right?
Yeah.
It was on sort of the Oankali baby transport ship thing.
I just imagine some random resistor with a rifle just shooting at this giant blob in the sky, be like, "God damn Oankali," and shaking its hands like.
Yeah, you need some more more effective anti-aircraft weaponry.
Yeah, it's like, God damn Octavia, you didn't write me a better weapon in this book.
So yeah, that makes sense as a prediction. Yep, we'll travel back to the village, and something will go wrong during the journey.
100%. I mean, obviously Air is not 100%, so Jodas will have to become another, again, like a walking pangolin, but maybe 5 legs, running super fast, trying to Wolverine attacking the resistors type of situation. So looking forward to it.
Okay, yeah, sounds good.
Awesome.
Right.
I think that's it for today, no?
I think so, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening. We are Xenothesis. You can find all the places we upload our podcast on xenothesis.com. I was Michael Glinka.
And I was Richard Axon.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.